Good afternoon. I am Councillor Keast and I'll be chairing today's meeting of the Planning Committee. We're not expecting a fire drill this afternoon, but if the alarm sounds, please exit by the fire exits and leave the building via the staircase to the foyer. Staff will then guide you to the muster point. Can I please ask that all mobile phones are now switched to silent or switched to aeroplane mode for the duration of this meeting? Can I please also draw your attention to the Council's protocol for recording photography and the use of social media, which has been distributed. In particular, please note that permission to record does not extend to the public gallery, and the rights of members of the public attending must be respected. To my left are officers from the Legal and Democratic Services, and to my right are the planning officers of the Council, and in front of me are the members of the Planning Committee. Good evening and welcome. As a reminder, if a member of the committee is not present for the whole duration of the item, they are precluded from voting or taking part in the debate. Mrs. Maidens, do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chairman. We have none.
Thank you. Have any members of the committee not read the reports and papers? Good. Item 2, minutes. Members are asked to approve the minutes of the previous meeting of the Planning Committee held on the 11th of September 2025, 9th of October, and the site view held, and on the 9th of October, and the site view working party held on the 27th of October. Can I have a show of hands, please, for approval? Thank you. That's unanimous. Can I confirm that the minutes are now approved? Thank you. Declaration of interest. Are there any disclosable pecuniary interests, please, here tonight? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I have to declare a person of pecuniary interest as I work at Heaven and South Downs College, and I'll get up and leave my space.
So you're going to have an early bath? Okay.
Be the first time this year.
Are there any non-pecuniary interests at all? Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I am Vice Chair of both Public Park and Moorlands Primary Schools, as referenced in the report.
Right, thank you. Noted. Anybody else? No. Does any member wish to declare that although they may have expressed their strong views on any agenda item in public, they do not consider that those views should prevent them from taking part in the debate and vote on this matter, as they are still open to considering all the other factors that are relevant to a discussion before forming a conclusive view? Good. Thank you. Finally, does any member wish to declare that they have either formed a conclusive view or on an agenda item, or whether the fair-minded and informed observer, having considered the facts, would conclude that the member has formed a conclusive view on the agenda item? I see none. Thank you. Okay, we go to item 4A, APP 2200439, Southdowns College, College Road, Purbrook, Waterlooville. Councillor Hulls has contacted the Planning Department to raise questions about the integrity of the data and documents relating to the application that are available on the Council's website following the migration to the new Arcus IT system. In light of his concerns, he has requested that the consideration of this application be deferred until further assurances can be given regarding this data. Officers are content that the data for this application is all available online and has been summarised in the officer's report, and therefore their advice is that the committee can and should proceed as planned to consider this application at tonight's meeting. However, members may wish to consider Councillor Hull's proposal to defer the item, and in order to avoid wasted time in proceeding further with the presentation, members are invited to consider this proposal at this stage, and if members are minded to defer the item, a councillor may propose a motion for this purpose, and if this motion is seconded, if this motion is seconded, vote on it. Councillor Hulls, would you like to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There's been quite a lot of backwards and forwards from when the papers were first issued on the 21st of October there were only 33 documents on the planning portal. And those have been added since then. On the 24th of October, I think it was, Mr. Weaver informed myself in an email that they were all uploaded. But when I looked at those documents on the 24th, there weren't any comments, public comments, and over 50% of the titles didn't match the documents which were there. And you have to download on the system, you have to download each document individually. You can't just look at them anymore. I think that I got an email on the 30th to say that all the titles had been changed back, but there's still no comments. Today, I've been informed that the comments are there, but they're not in the comments section, they're in the file section, and you have to search. If you search for comments, it only shows there's 2 comments, but actually there's 20 comments, but you have to go through 21 pages of documents to find those specific comments, which are objections or neutral comments. And my big worry is, my big concern is that, are we sure, are the officers absolutely sure that the data and the documents and all the comments are uploaded correctly into the new system? Because there seems to be a haphazard way of it's been done, so that we've not had all the documentation from when the papers were published. It's been drip-fed through to us. And my worry is it all there now? And I haven't had a concrete answer from the officers to say it is. At 4 o'clock today, I had one from the acting head of planning saying, I forget what it said, that it suggested that hopefully everything was there, but that didn't sound very strong to me. So my big worry is, at a later date, if more information comes to light, would any determination we make still be valid, or would it be open to challenge? And that's where I came from, saying that maybe we should just let the officers have some time to absolutely make sure that all the information is valid and correct. I don't know what anyone else thinks.
Thank you, Councillor Holes. Would any other members like to make a comment at all, please? Councillor Milne.
I know when I first read your bits and pieces, I was thinking, oh, you know, because I do trust, but I have to admit, listening to you now, and I think where it is such a vast development and where it is, and I do share your concerns, especially with what you're saying now. So yeah, I do get you.
Would the officers like to comment on this, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, members, Councillor Holes has made reference to the email that was issued by the Head of Planning earlier this afternoon. I just want to check that all members have received and read that email. So yeah, the points that are raised in it are that certainly with regard to part 2 of the planning register, so those are decided applications. Obviously what we're considering tonight is an application that hasn't been decided, but with decided applications, we're still resolving the question of getting redacted documents online. That's underway, and that should be resolved in the next few weeks. That doesn't affect your deliberations this evening of this current application. With regard to current applications, as the note sets out, over 650,000 documents had to be transferred as part of the Arcus project. A total of 200 out of that 650,000 failed to load. Those have been checked. None of them relate to this case. So as officers, we are content that the case file that is available for public scrutiny is full. And does contain all the relevant information, and in particular the concerns raised about objections. They are all online. The case officer, Arleta Mijewska, actually started drafting her report before the document transfer happened, and so effectively we've been able to corroborate the number of objections that were in the original draft of the report against what is online, and they do corroborate 18 objections and 2 neutral comments. So we're entirely content that you have all the information available to you, and members of the public do. In terms of Councillor Holes, is obviously he and I have had a dialogue. Last Friday evening, I advised all members of the committee that the incorrect titling, which is a problem on some cases, had been resolved. I advised you all of that, and I advised you that the public comments were available, and they were. They're not under the comments tab, they're in the documents tab, but they were. It was only earlier today that I received Councillor Howells's question about, I can't find the public comments, and I was able to clarify to all members of committee that, how you find them, they're there as individual documents. So they have been published, we have met our statutory duty, and as officers we feel that it is reasonable for you to proceed to determine this application this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. In light of the information provided, would any member like to make a proposal, please? Councillor Hulls.
Yeah, I propose that we defer it until the system's properly audited and we know that everything is absolutely as it should be, which it currently isn't.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Robert, you're seconded. Do you want to speak at all, Councillor Robert?
I can appreciate what's been said about the fact that it's all up to date now, but in the time zone that we've had to look at everything, it's only sort of up to date for sure now, and it's not always easy to go and find that information. And certainly when I've read through the documentation that we did receive, it is difficult to quickly identify some of the comments, or even if they're all there, and the uncertainty in your mind is whether they were or they weren't. So I think, although the question is, have we read the documentation before coming to this meeting? The answer is yes, but there's an uncertainty in your mind as to whether actually you have read everything that can be there in the time. So I think it's that uncertainty that I think is worth drawing attention to. Thank you.
Right, we have a proposal and a seconder. Would you like to read out what we're actually voting on, please?
Certainly, Chair, thank you. You'll be voting on whether you would like to defer this application on the basis that you're unsure whether you have seen all the information.
Those in favour of deferring, please show. Those against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Is that 4-3, was it? That is, the motion falls. 4-3. Thank you. So we'll proceed with tonight's proposal. Ms. Mazalka, would you like to introduce tonight's application, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. Before I introduce the case, I would like to draw your attention to the updates. And just in summary, the updates contain information on community infrastructure levy, which we were still waiting for at the time of writing my report. There is a clarity on the number of site notices that were displayed when the application was published. There is an update on legal matters which are relevant to Hazel Dormice. Updated list of updated condition, which includes list of approved drawings. And the final part of the update includes responses to councillors' questions, which were asked at the site viewing working party on a Monday. And this relates to clarification about drying facilities being provided within the proposed flats, detail of play or ancillary equipment to be located within the open space. Time frame for Hampshire County Council road improvements to College Road, and clarification on the position of a badger fence within the application site. So the application relates to South Downs College site, and the application seeks planning permission, full planning permission for redevelopment of the southern section of the site in order to provide 85 dwellings with car parking, associated landscaping, waste and cycle storage. There would also be a new access from College Road. So this slide shows the extent of the application site. You can see that it does include a building which currently is within the college site, and obviously the application proposes to demolish this building. Just so you are maybe not confused about this. So you'll obviously see parts of the building as well outside of the red line. There is a separate planning application roughly in this area here to create car parking spaces. So this would offset, I will go into it a little bit later in my presentation, but this is generally to offset the loss of car parking here within the remainder of the application site. So in effect, this building, this is a cafe building, and this entire building would be demolished in order to accommodate both proposals. Here you can see a bit clearer the application site. You can see the car park and the buildings. This slide shows the site within the context. You can see the South Downs College buildings. Beyond the application site, you've got obviously the College Road just here and residential development on the other side of the road. I'll just briefly mention we were asked during the site visit on Monday, where was the Roman villa? So the site of the Roman villa is just there. And this slide shows the site from the other perspective. So it's looking towards the south. So, oh.
I bought a drone, Stephen.
Apologies for this. So this land to the south is where is the other application for Campdown currently under consideration. A few photographs from the application site. So here it's looking towards the eastern boundary, and you can see the part of the building to be demolished. This photograph looks towards southeast across the site, so you can appreciate the boundary screening and the extent of the hard surfacing within the site. This is boundary looking towards the east, so again boundary screening. This is the southern boundary of the site. You've got a little arrow here that indicates roughly where the photograph was taken and what you're looking at, or which direction you're looking at. And just another, it's not very exciting site, as you can see, a lot of hard surfacing and greenery, some minor landscaping. So this is now looking towards College Road. This is now a photograph taken from Apollo Drive, so it's just opposite the application site, and this photograph shows you here, this is roughly around this location here is where the proposed access would be. And this is just looking towards the south along College Road, and just a few more photographs just to show you the site from the outside. just to draw your attention to the existing boundary screening. So this is the proposed site layout, and it shows the proposal. So the proposal includes 85 residential units. This includes 45 flats provided within 5 blocks of flats and 40 dwellings. I'll just indicate on the here on the location plan where the blocks of flats would be. So we've got one here. Then we've got 2 blocks of flats within the central parts of the site and 2 blocks of flats within the southern part of the site. As I mentioned, the vehicular access is from College Road, is just south of Apollo Drive, and this will take you into the site and then towards the eastern parts of the site and towards the south, and then there is a secondary road leading towards the south, towards the southern parts of the site. You can see a lot of boundary planting has been retained with this layout plan. You have 2 main open space areas within the central part of the site, and as well a secondary habitat site on the eastern side of the site. You can't really see this very clearly, but these the blocks of flats, these apartments, I'll show you this later on a typical floor plan. They will have secure cycle storage and waste bin storage. The dwellings would have vast majority of the dwellings would have storage, bike storage in the gardens. And there's a couple of examples, I think somewhere around this area, where the dwellings will actually use the storage, bike storage within a communal storage area. And you can see obviously car parking spaces. Some are spaces in front of properties, in front of the dwellings. Some are communal spaces near the apartments, and some are within courtyards, so just behind the residential gardens as well. And obviously you can see the extent of the planting and proposed trees on the plan as well. These are typical street scenes. So this one on the bottom is actually the street scene that would face College Road. You wouldn't see it very well because obviously it would be screened by the planting, by the boundary screening. But from within the site, you would see this street scene. So you've got the blocks of flats and then dwellings, and this is the a side elevation of the block of flats within the southern part of the site. And this is the street scene kind of looking onto the open space. So it's again an apartment block and a fog and dwellings. So this is one of the proposed house types on site for the dwellings. Just show a couple more just to give you an idea of the quality of development on site. And this is the proposed fog. And this is the block of flats. So this would be the elevation facing onto College Road. So this is the one in the northern part of the site. And this is one of the block of flats within the southern part of the site. As you can see, it's fairly traditional design, 3 stories in height. And this is a typical floor plan. So as I said, for apartments, so as I mentioned earlier on, there is a secure cycle storage and a separate storage for bins and waste and recycling. And then you've got an apartment within the blocks, apartment on one side, apartment on the other side, and stairwell in dividing the flats. So briefly, in terms of car parking, the council's parking SPD would normally require, for a development of this size, 158 spaces for the dwellings and apartments and 32 visitor spaces. The SPD also allows for reduced provision if there is affordable housing present within the site, which is the case on this application. There will be 30%, so 26 dwellings would be secured with a legal agreement to be social. We also know that the applicant is a social housing provider, so we've been advised that outside of the planning policy requirement for 30% of houses to be social, the applicant will be seeking further grants from the government to provide this entire site as social. But as I said, in terms of planning policy, we only can secure 30%, and this is what the applicant is, through this application, offering. So in terms of the car parking provision provided on site, there would be a slight under provision. So there will be 111 spaces for the residents, 9 spaces for visitors, and there will be 1 space for contractors for the SSE if they wanted to come and maintain the substation. We haven't got objection from Highways Authority on the basis of the under provision, because they also recognize that at least 30% of the units would be social, and social housing generally doesn't generate the same amount of car parking demand as market housing. So they agree with this assumption, and therefore they didn't raise objection to the provision of car parking within the site. This site shows 10-year plan, something that was requested during Councillor's visit to the site on Monday. So this plan shows, obviously in red, the what dwellings or apartments would be allocated for affordable rent, and where would be shared ownership. So the split in terms of affordable rent versus shared ownership meets the policy requirement. So we have the block of flats facing College Road, 2 dwellings nearby, another 2 within the central part of the site, and 1 dwelling within the eastern part of the site would be affordable rent, and then the apartment within the southern section of the site would be shared ownership. A couple of slides showing proposed improvements to College Road. Again, something that was requested on a Monday to be explained tonight. So I just would like to make it clear that these improvements are outside of the red line predominantly, and these improvements are led by Hampshire County Council, by Highways Authority, and they aim to improve the pedestrian and cyclist provision or facilities by providing separate facilities for cyclists and pedestrian in College Road. This slide shows the proposed access onto the site. This would also include pedestrian crossing, and as a part of the wider improvements to College Road, there would be further pedestrian crossing, which currently doesn't exist here, between the college site and Apollo Drive, and a further pedestrian access, which, like I say, as well, doesn't really exist at the moment. So you would have additional crossing points. Further up, so these are 2 existing bus stops, one by the college and one on the opposite side. So you can see in red, we've got the cyclist lane and further separate pedestrian lanes. And further up north, just passing the entrance onto the college, you would have a new pedestrian crossing, which would be a signaled crossing. So this is Hampshire County Council's vision. That there is more improvements to it, but these are the main improvements. These improvements are linked also to Campdown development. So if they were to go ahead, they are linked to Campdown. So Campdown, the provision, the planning permission for Campdown would secure further funding for these works. And this application for consideration tonight would also provide financial contribution towards these improvements. Let's move on to ecology, something that was discussed fairly thoroughly on Monday. So just wanted to show you members the location of various protected species. So we have received a series of ecological reports and a series of surveys were undertaken within the site. So this first slide shows the main badger set, which is just here. And then you can see these orange stars and red stars, which indicate entrances used by badgers. This plan shows the position and the extent of badger fence. So the blue line shows the buffers for the badgers, where they tend to, when they tend to move, but obviously they move across the entire site. But the red dots here show you the fence for the badgers, and this is mainly to protect the residential properties and the residential gardens from any badger activity that might be harmful to the residential properties. The fence itself is not designed to stop the badgers from moving across the site. They still can freely move across the site, but where they tend to move or tend to exist, like I say, the fences and the residential properties will be to some extent protected by it. And you see the stars here, they indicate where there will be the retained sets within the site. Another slide shows you the bat activity. So it's obviously mainly where you have trees within the site. The surveys didn't indicate that actually there were roosting bats on site. They're usually commuter bats. So this is to show you where the bats are, and in terms of the actual mitigation, there obviously would be bat boxes installed on the properties, but in terms of the impact on the bats, the main kind of mitigation that is required, given the fact that there's mainly commuter bats on site. So the main mitigation focuses on the lighting within the site, and obviously appropriate mitigation measures during the actual construction. Another slide shows you or survey indicated presence of hazel dormice and their nests. So the orange dots shows where the surveys were undertaken, the survey tubes, and then pink ones, the pink squares show where the nests are, and the green ones show where actually hazel dormice were seen. And it's just another slide in relation to dormice, shows where there would be clearance, the need for clearance of some of the areas of habitat, and that's in red. And then in orange, you can see new areas that will be habitats which will be recreated within the site. And very quickly, this shows the surveys and findings from reptiles surveys. So again, the white circles show you where the surveys were undertaken. when we're back online. The red stars indicate the presence of slowworms, and the blue stars indicate where common lizards were. And then final plan on ecology shows you partly what you have seen already. The badger sets shows you dormice, new habitat areas, shows you the boxes for swift boxes, bird boxes, and green are the bad boxes. And for the reptiles, you have a couple of hibernacula, so one within the open space and one within close to the boundary planting within the southern part of the site. Plan on the drainage, just to indicate there would be a attenuation tank located underneath the open space, which would retain the surface water, which would then move onto the northern part of the site at a restricted rate, and it would go off the site and it would connect to Southern Waters network within which exists within the college site. The foul sewer will connect to existing sewer to the south of the application site. Southern Wet Network are happy that they can accept the flows from the site, but you will also appreciate the fact that currently the site is heavily hard surfaced, and this plan actually shows the pink areas are the dwellings, so obviously impermeable, and impermeable areas which are the roads, but everything else, the residential gardens and car parking spaces will be permeable. So in terms of actual surface water situation on site, the development will absorb more surface water than it currently does. So a final slide, almost a final slide on just to summarize the main consideration. So obviously the principle of development, we have a site which is a brownfield site, where principle of such development is acceptable, subject to compliance with other relevant planning policies. We obviously have to be minded of the council's situation on 5-year housing land supply. Other considerations include design and impact on heritage assets. I didn't go into too much detail on that, but generally it's the retaining of the boundary screening was the primary focus on avoiding detrimental harm on heritage assets. I spoke about ecology and the mitigation. I shown you the plan about car parking spaces, mentioned the housing mix and affordable housing, and drainage. So officers are satisfied that the application meets the relevant requirements of a wide range of planning policies, and therefore the application is recommended for planning permission, subject to a Section 106 legal agreement to secure contributions, financial contributions, which are mentioned earlier today. And obviously you have a full list of these developers' obligations in the report, and also a recommendation to grant planning permission subject to conditions, again listed in the officer's report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Before I proceed to the debate, I would like to remind members that in accordance with the Council Standing Order 21.9, the recommendation of a report submitted to a meeting is deemed to be removed and seconded, and the motion shall operate as a motion and can be debated without need for members of the committee.
Sorry, Councillor Keast, we've missed our speaker.
Right, okay. Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, we'll start again. Out of practice, that's what it is. Copies of all written deputations have been circulated to members of the committee and have been published with the council's website. We have received one written deputation and they have requested to speak. Please note that members may ask questions. These questions should not be used to extend the allocated speaking time and should only be used to clarify matters of fact. Mr. Besant, would you please take your seat at the speaker's table? I remind you that you have a total of 5 minutes in which to make your deputation, starting from when you begin to speak. We will give you a reminder if necessary 30 seconds before the end. We will start the clock when you start. Thank you. Press the button just to get the mic. That's it.
Good evening, councillors. I'm Matthew Besant. I'm Senior Planning Manager for Places for People. Thank you for your time this evening to consider our planning application.
Just pull your microphone a little closer.
For the redevelopment of this former college car park to provide 85 dwellings, including public open space, landscaping and other works. Places for People, the applicant and the company I represent here tonight, are a non-for-profit social enterprise who build and manage affordable housing developments both for ourselves and in partnership with local authorities and third parties nationwide. We manage around 250,000 properties. We are an affordable housing provider. We do not sell off our affordable housing or other assets to third parties. We deliver our sites and manage them for the long term. With this in mind, we are able to design our developments to reflect the needs of our residents with whom we work and whose needs we understand. On site, we will fully control all matters including residential care, building maintenance, landscape maintenance, highways and parking, and other on-site matters. This South Downs College car park site is an opportunity for Places for People to deliver in an area in which housing need is acute and worsening. Indeed, the council has just a 1.8 year housing land supply against a government minimum target of 5 years. The car park is disused, surplus to requirements, brownfield land, the kind of place we should be looking for opportunities for sustainable development. A number of councillors attended a site visit on Monday afternoon. During that visit, a number of matters were raised which I wish to address now to assist you in understanding and considering our application. Affordable housing. As I read earlier, the proposal includes affordable rented properties across a mix of flats and houses. Formerly, the Section 106 shared ownership properties are within a single flat block. However, in reality, the majority, if not all of the remaining properties on the site will be offered as shared ownership, which will certainly aid in making the site appear tenure blind. Car parking. The site provides 111 parking spaces plus visitor spaces and others, which broadly equates to each flat having a single space and each dwelling having 2 spaces with 6 exceptions. Prior to this evening, I provided council's officers with detailed analysis of local census figures from 2011, and that identifies that across all tenures, some 88% of flat occupiers have 1 or fewer vehicles in this borough. This number is even greater for affordable flat occupiers, where census data recorded that 56% have no vehicle at all and 93% have 0 or 1 cars. The majority of our houses provide 2 parking spaces. 83% of house owners in Havant have 2 or fewer vehicles. As I highlighted before, as development managers and landowners, we will be able to thoroughly manage on-street parking, with occupiers being fully aware of the limit on vehicle parking availability. Further still, every parking space will have electric vehicle parking capability. Sustainability. The site is a no gas development, which means all properties will be heated with low carbon technology. All properties will benefit from air source heat pumps and solar technology to utilise or further reduce carbon output from the dwellings. As our letter suggested, one of the reasons this proposal shrunk over its period from 102 dwellings to 85 is to better account for ecological constraints. And provide on-site enhancements. These include dormouse nests, swift boxes, bat boxes, new wildflower areas, new scrub and woodland areas, and 2 new hypernaculums. As I set out in my written statement before you, and to summarise, this proposal includes a mixture of 1 to 2 bedroom flats and 2, 3 and 4 bedroom houses. It's designed for long-term management, includes new open space, and it's designed to keep vehicle movements below 20 miles an hour, contributes towards local health and education facilities, contributes towards the enhancement of local cycle networks to the benefits of residents and college users, contains almost half an acre of additional dormouse habitat and other ecological enhancements, and seeks to protect and enhance the eastern tree belt.
30 seconds.
As a result of the above, the proposal has no objection from statutory consultees. Just to reiterate, Havant has a 1.8-year housing land supply against a minimum need of 5 years, and we hope that you will support us in delivering this development by approving it tonight.
Okay, can you stay there, Mr. Besant, for a moment, please? Thank you for that. Members, do we have any questions for Mr. Besant, please? Councillor Hulls.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to pick up on the parking because obviously that's a little bit of a worry. You mentioned the Havant 2011 census with 2021. Oh, okay. I've got the 2011 census figures, but they are wildly different from what you mentioned. In the fact that 42% of households had 4 or more cars, and 28% had 3 cars, and 21% had 2 cars. 2% had 1 car and 7% had no cars. So they're very, very different to what you were saying. And I just think that 1 car per flat is very low, with only 9 visitors' cars as well. I'm just worried that recent developments near me, this is a big problem with not enough parking, and it starts to spill out onto roads outside of the development and causes problems for existing residents.
I'm reluctant to kind of get into a game of tit for tat about census data. I don't obviously do undertake those surveys myself, but it is a thorough analysis, and it's one that we use on all of our sites. I think I would have liked, if I'd had a little bit more of an opportunity, to provide our own in-house data, which isn't thorough enough for me to be able to have extrapolated. But what we do know is that as affordable housing providers, the vast majority, I know it's quite hard to believe because it doesn't always look that way, but the vast majority of affordable rent properties at very least don't incur any vehicle movements at all. It is quite normal. For market housing, the requirement for parking is higher, but this site will be offered as 100% affordable. Even though the Section 106 will secure 30%, the remainder will be dealt with by grant funding. And we know that the amount of parking that we have on our sites, for example, in Borden, not so far from here in the real world, the amount of parking that's generated is lower than you would have expected. Yes, there's always 1 or 2 properties where somebody will have 3 or 4 cars, and that doesn't necessarily help if they've only got so many parking spaces. I think as the benefit, particularly with a site like this, is that since we will manage the site ourselves, we can be very clear with tenants, which is ultimately affordable rent occupiers are tenants, what the provision is for them. And if that doesn't suit their needs, then we can find their appropriate needs elsewhere. But we will be very clear that if that isn't here, then we can't provide for it.
Thank you. Any other questions from members, please? Councillor Milner.
Thank you. One of the questions that was asked at the site viewing working party was regarding drying facilities. Now, I contacted you a little while ago. I emailed you back. So I always bring up the thing about balconies. I've got a big issue with the fact there's no balconies anywhere. And it's got here, in response to request A, the applicant has commented that each property, flats and houses will have their own washing and drying equipment areas internally. So within the flats, what would that be?
Well, since there'll be affordable rent or shared ownership, we'll furnish them. So they'll have washing machines and dryers, or a washer dryer unit, depending on the size of the kitchen.
Yeah, please.
My issue with that, and that's fine, you have washing machines and dryers, but not everything can go in a dryer. So what you're going to end up with, there's going to be a lot of people in these flats and they're going to have errors, and that's not really good, you know, for within the house and whatever. and there's no area outside where, and I know you can't put washing out all the time, where you can put washing out. And I know when I spoke to you, I emailed you about balconies, and you said, well, it increases the cost. Now I know where I drive, there are these flats, and the balconies are metal balconies, so it's just attached, so it's not built in. And I do have a big issue with people in flats, whether it's, you know, full rent, whether it's social rent, being confined in these spaces with no space of their own, whether or not it's for drying clothes or just for having that area which is their own that they can sit out on. That's, you know, I do think it's an issue.
There's quite a lot to unpack there. I mean, obviously, if we're providing washer dryers, that covers the vast majority of users. Yeah, I think it is true to say that what you do find is if people are using drying racks, for example, indoors, I suppose what you're alluding to is that it results in things like damp inside. And one of the benefits of our modern properties is that whilst they are very well concealed for energy efficiency, there is also cross ventilation. And inside, I don't have it here, but inside our application pack was a noise assessment in terms of the impacts that it would have for people that couldn't open windows, for example. And what it found was that there are just 1 or 2 properties on College Road where that's the case. So the vast majority of properties will be able to open windows, of course, to allow for cross flow of air. And those that can't do it, or have an elevation that faces onto College Road, there'll be mechanical ventilation inside those properties as well, so that there'll be a constant flow of air to prevent damp and mould and that type of thing. So that's one issue. I think the other is that, you know, balconies do incur substantial construction costs, and they are a maintenance issue, and you'll find that the vast majority of affordable housing providers will have a clause in their lease that will say you can't drive things on the balconies or leave bikes on the balconies or have barbecues on the balconies, and the reason for that is because they become a substantial health and safety issue. Indeed, we as a company have had a number of instances where fires have been caused by balconies and they spread along the outside of the building. So balconies have become a very difficult thing to deliver, particularly for affordable housing. And I think the last point is that the site does provide a substantial amount of open space in an area that also benefits from quite a good amount of public open space, I think it's fair to say. So, yeah, there isn't a 1.5 square metre balcony for every property, but I think in this particular instance, there is a good balance struck.
Thank you. I'm sure Councillor Milner will recall that I actually raised this issue on Site View, and somebody quietly told me that I was there to consider what was on the order papers and not what I'd like, and I think that probably applies to you as well. Anybody else want to Councillor Hanson?
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the ecology, I see there's provision for new or adjusted habitat. What is the time frames of that, in terms of, is that going to be put in afterwards, in which case the wildlife is going to have moved somewhere else because it's been disrupted, or is that going to be in there so that the disruption moves them into that and they've got somewhere to go?
And I think on this site, the vast majority, in fact, I think it's safe to say all of the ecology is on the periphery. So I think the vast majority of it will be fenced outside of the construction zone to begin with, using reptile fencing and Harris fencing, you know, under licence where necessary, in order to keep the ecology out. You'll see from the plan, I think it's been flickered behind me, there is a substantial buffer there. The vast majority of the site of the development is on the area that's already hard standing and can be buffered out. So I don't think there's going to be a big issue in this case with wildlife being displaced and then expected to kind of reappear on the site. That being said, the plans that were submitted do indicate, or do indeed provide, quite a substantial amount of on-site ecology enhancements, which let's have a look. Which included 17 new dormouse nest boxes, 27 groups of Swift boxes, which is essentially to say every building will have them, but they're not where exactly on the flat blocks they're to go isn't finalised. 4 new bat boxes, which are on the south-facing elevations of the apartment blocks, which is to face where the bats currently are, and then those new wildflower areas and hibernaculums. So I think actually undertaking a biodiversity assessment, this site represents quite a substantial enhancement, ecology-wise.
Councillor Horton, I think you were next.
Thank you, Chair. You've got solar panels on every property. Can you tell me how efficient, if there's enough to provide total energy for each property, or how efficient they are? And can you tell me how the solar panels on the flats will work in terms of distributing energy? Thank you.
So the final details of we haven't gone and purchased the solar panels. Obviously, they do come with different efficiency levels. So, and obviously the elevation on which they're put has an impact on the efficiency as well. So our properties, we attempt to meet, given that we don't technically have to yet, future home standards. So it's about delivering a reduced carbon load from each of the properties. So the air source heat pumps do quite a lot of that work for all of the properties, and then the solar panels are designed to reduce the amount of carbon emissions that the property produces on a per square metre kilowatt usage. Is a calculation essentially, so which is attempts to reduce it by 80% against current conditions, so which is quite substantial. I would be lying if we said all of our sites achieve that. It does come down to the elevations that the solar panels are put on. So we're trying to strike a balance there. In terms of the energy distribution for the flats, what generally happens is for the social rent, the electricity bills are coming through us anyway, so we simply deduct the cost of whatever the generated solar energy is from the flats and distribute that as if it were the bill for each of the flats. So they will receive a reduced bill, if you like, that accounts for that. For the shared ownership, something similar happens. For the market flats, the strategy is complicated because different sites approach it in different ways. But what's likely to happen on this site is that is something similar, that we would take all of the electricity that was generated from the roof and then distribute the cost back off of the rent for the shared ownership units, so that they get a return on the fact that there's solar panels on the roof.
Councillor Robert.
Thank you, Chair. Just coming back to ecology, in principle, it looks good to see there's an extra half an acre of open land or land allocated for the wildlife, in particular the dormice. Just a question, is that land going to be grass and mown, in which case that's not particularly useful for dormice? Is it going to be open to the public to walk around, in which case that's not very useful for the dormice, and there's badger sets in there as well? Or is it intended to be allowed to develop literally into a sort of a grown area with suitable trees like hazel, whatever, for the dormice? Is it going to be sort of more or less out of bounds? Thank you.
Yeah, precisely. So the public open space on so the public open space on the site is primarily the central area, and there was a plan in amongst the pack that indicates the areas that are dormouse and other ecology enhancement areas, and so that area to the southeast of the site is designed to be scrubland, with a simple walking route around the kind of perimeter of it that will be mown. So the rest is scrubland in order to meet our requirements.
Any more questions? Yes, Councillor Hanson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm coming back to ecology again. I've been trying to get my head completely around the badger set and the location and so on, and the impact of the fencing. Is the fencing going to go down to a depth to sort of prevent too much interaction so that residents don't get annoyed and the badgers don't get disturbed? Because it looked as though it currently goes sort of decent way onto the site and under people's gardens and so on. What's the plan there?
So the 20-metre buffer doesn't necessarily refer to the area that badgers are active. It's a 20-metre buffer, a theoretical buffer around the set. Of course, in reality, today they're not going to be wandering across bits of tarmac for no good reason. They'll be utilising their own thoroughfares. So the fencing that's provided is usually what you get it, and it almost certainly will be on this site, is kind of a mesh that does go half a metre or so into the ground, and it's just an attempt. So they could theoretically walk right around it, because you'll see from the plan it doesn't prevent them from walking around. It's just about trying to prevent them as much as possible from extending their sets into the areas that residents are. As it goes, it's unlikely to be a problem on this site anyway, because the vast majority of that fence is against then a driveway or a road of some description. So they're not, unless there's only one very small area in which they could theoretically kind of cross an area of grass and attempt to get into a garden. So it's really just about preventing that little last bit of incursion, really, to getting into people's gardens. It's a discouragement more than it is a kind of an attempt to trap them into an area.
Thank you. Any more questions at all, please? Oh, thank you very much. I hope you will take back with you the importance this site has for the protection of the various wildlife it lives on this particular site, because it is quite exceptional to have so much going on around a site. And I think it is very important, particularly the dormice, for example, which are desperately disappearing. And I hope you'll take the message back that we are concerned, and hope that you will do your best to preserve everything on the site. You may return to the public gallery. Thank you for answering the questions. Do officers have any comments to make regarding the written deputations before I allow members to ask questions, please?
Only if members feel that there is any clarification needed on top of what the applicant just said.
Councillor Robert.
Just because of the map you put up to do with the slow worms against that one, I can't quite make up my mind where that line of slow worms was in relationship to the buildings. So is that tree line, those trees are staying, yeah?
No.
I mean, because if they're not, then what happens to the slow worms? It looked to me that the houses are there.
Yeah, they are.
So what happens to the slow worms? Oh, sorry.
So this slide shows where the slow worms and lizards were seen. Obviously, you also asked the question about the construction and what's going to happen during the construction, when they're going to go. So normally, obviously, these works are done under Natural England license as well. So you gradually cut the grass or some vegetation, depending on the species. So you do it gradually, so you almost push it away. So they will be pushed towards the boundaries of the site into where the trees are during the construction. But then once this development is completed, it will include a couple of hibernacula for the lizards and for the grass snakes. So you've got one here and there is another here. But like I say, this boundary on the east and west and south, the greenery here will be trimmed a little bit, but the vast majority of it will be retained, and this is where obviously that will become the main habitat for the species. And obviously this land is a habitat land, and I will draw your attention to the officer's recommendation and Part A, which lists the developer's obligation. And we've got here landscape and ecological management plan. So this is to do with how these works are going to take place and what's going to happen afterwards in terms of maintenance. So you raised the question of what's going to happen. Is the grass going to be mowed and kept obviously unfriendly for the species? So the details of that will follow with the management plan, which will be secured with a legal agreement. So obviously it will be in place in perpetuity to ensure that these species habitats are maintained in the appropriate condition
Councillor Robert.
Just to follow up, thank you, Chair. I'm just thinking it's a big ask to go from across the top down to where the places available for them. I'm just wondering whether they're going to actually appropriately
They go around and gather them all up.
yeah, rather than just hope they're going to go that way. I just feel, I don't know if that's in the plan in detail or whether that's part of the ecological plan, but it just strikes me that it would be
I can tell you, Councillor Robert, they are quite adaptable because in local woodlands, right by some houses, I put a great big pile of chipped bark. And it sat there for about 5 or 6 months. And when we came to move, it was full of slow worms. So they are quite adaptable. They do survive. Any more questions, please, for officers? Councillor Mill.
Yeah, what I was just thinking of is, I know this is affordable housing, but it seems to be the way that government wants us to go.
So there will be, because this is now a requirement through building regulation. So there will have to be EV charging points. We don't secure this in planning because we are not supposed to duplicate requirements of other legislation.
Are you happy with that? Thank you. Can you explain? Sorry, Councillor Howells.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question on the stormwater drainage. There's not a SUD system, and the stormwater drainage is being put straight into Southern Water's combined system. As we know, there's lots of issues with stormwater and sewage treatment plants, and it's going straight into the sea when there's too much rain. What is the position? I thought our plans, even our existing plan, supposed that there should be SUDS systems, and certainly I know there's legislation coming that forces that to happen for anything over, I think, 10 units. How come we haven't got any sustainable drainage on this site?
So the sustainable drainage on this site includes the attenuation tank, which would be located within the central part of the site. This attenuation tank will retain surface water only, so it's only for surface water, so it's not combined system. There is a separate system for surface water, and what the attenuation tank will do is it will basically retain the water, surface rainwater, and will maintain the water after the rainfall, and will slowly release the rainwater onto the Southern Water network. So by slowing down the flows from the site onto the Southern Water network, this is your sustainable urban drainage. The site is not required to provide, I appreciate that you probably consider maybe some swales or different ways of retaining the water, but obviously this is normally dictated by the site context and what is the permeable areas. So there is no requirement to provide any swales or any other forms of SADs other than the attenuation tank, because this site provides so much open space or permeable surfaces which will infiltrate the water into the ground. So there is no, other than the attenuation tank, there is no reason to provide any other forms of SADs. And as I mentioned during my presentation, you have a separate foul system. So it's not a combined system. You've got separate foul system and separate surface water system. So these wouldn't be combined, these wouldn't be mixed. But like I said, the reason why there is no other forms of SADs is because there is no requirement for that, given how permeable this site is.
Councillor Howells?
Yeah, just a supplementary. I wasn't saying within the site, but it's going into a combined sewer, Southern Waters, that there are not two systems. There's only one system that Southern Water have. So all the rainwater will be going into the sewage system and going to the treatment works. And most sites now don't allow that, and Southern Water don't allow that. And I was just questioning why, for a development of 85 units, this is allowed to not have a sustainable drainage system.
Obviously, Southern Water didn't object to this proposal. They might have objected originally based on the information available to them at that point, but obviously this application is supported with a drainage strategy, and it was reviewed not only by Southern Water but also by the lead local flood authority, and we didn't receive any objection for this site in terms of the actual surface water or water to be present within the site, or in terms of the fact that ultimately both systems will join at some point outside of the application site, and will end up in a combined system.
I have a question. Is this site sustainable in regards to public transport?
So as a part of as I said earlier on, as a part of the applicants' or developers' obligations, there will be contributions towards improvement of the College Road. If this doesn't go ahead, Hampshire County Council explained that the developer's contribution towards the College Road improvement would be used towards other improvement, and that would be for the pedestrian and cyclists connection onto the primary and secondary schools in Crookhall Lane.
You're referring to highways there. I'm talking about public transport. I mean, is there a public transport?
There is obviously a bus stop just outside of the college.
Right. Do we know the frequency of the bus service? I mean, is it a good service?
I don't know. I don't know from the top of
know?
my head. All I can say
Right.
is that this is something that Hampshire County Council Highways Authority would review, and they've got the relevant information on public transport, including the buses and the routes and the various timings, and county as the highway authority, they didn't raise this as a concern during the various consultation exercises.
The only reason I've asked that question is because we've been told by the developer that they are hoping that a lot of people would not have cars, therefore it is important that there is a reasonable public transport for them, and I just wanted to confirm that that was the case. That's
I would say if that wasn't the case, the county would have raised this as a concern, because ultimately they didn't object to the under provision of car parking on this site. They did, however, ask for a condition to be imposed that requires the applicant to submit parking management plan. And this plan is to prevent parking within the site. But as I said, they would normally object if they felt that this under provision is going to lead to any severe harm to the highway network. They would have objected.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Any more questions for the officers? Councillor Hanson, followed by Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Just trying to clarify, one of the slides you put up earlier talked about a puffin crossing and the Hampshire's plans. Are those plans the ones conditional on any potential future campdown development? So, yeah, so I'm concerned about the speed of that road for these properties. I mean, it's bad enough with students crossing, so that's a sort of up in the air issue at the moment.
Yes, that's correct. The county confirmed that campdown development would likely to provide the majority of funding for these improvements. There are obviously crossing points in College Road, but separate to that is also the fact that Highways Authority reviewed the traffic generation from the site. Obviously, they looked thoroughly into the proposed access, and they are satisfied that the speeds in College Road would not lead to any severe highways concerns. They're not concerned with the traffic generated by the development itself. They also asked, and the applicant has provided traffic assessment, which not only included the site itself, but it also included camp down. And that was during the early stages of this application when it was still for 102 dwellings. And at that point, camp down was proposed in 628. So with the data that Highways Authority requested from the applicant, they did not raise concerns over the speeds in College Road that would lead to any pedestrian danger or cyclist danger. Obviously, they are planning to improve the situation. But at this point, and obviously they are aware that this may not come forward, but even with that in mind, they didn't raise an objection to this proposal on this basis.
Councillor Shimbart.
Thank you, Chairman. Not a question, just clarification. The bus service, College Road, it's pretty frequent. It's 20 minutes to 39, which takes you through to Havant or down to Waterlooville. The number 20 would take you up to QA and down into Portsmouth. I'm not sure of the frequency of that, but I know the 39 is pretty good. Okay.
As a bus user, thank you. Any more questions to the officers? Right, I see none. Members, thank you. Before I proceed to the debate, I would like to remind members that in accordance with the Council Standing Order 21.9, the recommendation of a report submitted to a meeting is deemed to have been moved and seconded, and the motion shall operate as a motion and can be debated without the need for members of the committee having to move or second the recommendation. If members wish to amend this motion, for example, by adding a condition or reason for refusal, you may do so provided that the amendment is proposed and seconded and agreed by a formal vote. If members are minded to go against the officer's recommendation, you may vote against the original motion. And when the original motion is lost, you will be able to propose a second and fresh motion and vote on it. However, planning reasons must be given to justify the motion. I shall now proceed to the debate. Anybody like Councillor Hulls? Why am I not surprised?
Thank you, Chairman, for that as well. Yeah, I think this is a fantastic scheme. I think it's exactly the sort of thing we should be promoting in the borough. I was slightly worried about the parking, but I think the applicant has shown that through their own data with similar schemes, they are content with the level of parking, which is way below what we would expect. And had this been any normal house builder, I would have been extremely concerned, but I think my concerns have been put to rest on that. I think the other big one here is the ecology, but there seems to be some care that has been put in and some thought about the ecology. It's going to be difficult. You're going to build 85 units very close to all that ecology, but again, I think the applicant has shown that they will give it due consideration. So, yes, I'm all for this application.
Thank you. Councillor Shimbart.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I agree with Councillor Hulls. Given the fact that we do need to build homes for our residents, I would certainly support this application. Thank you.
Anybody else want to come? Councillor Robert.
Yes, I'm broadly in favour. I think it's good to see a brownfield site being developed in this way. I have a reservation if the camp down site doesn't get developed, or until it gets developed, there's a potential road safety issue with going across to the playing area on the other side of the road, because if the camp doesn't go ahead, or until it goes ahead, that road safety measures won't be put in place. So it's a bit of a worry. But I dare say, over time, something would be done about that. But I don't think there's a huge amount of on-site open space, particularly because one of the areas I thought would be, I'm pleased to see, isn't going to be, which is that far corner which will now be pretty much devoted entirely for the wildlife. So that's a really good plus thing. But it strikes me, therefore, there's only that section in the middle. So I'm wondering if children in particular are going to be gravitating across the road. That's my only real concern. The ecology side, provided the management plan, the ecological management plan is done appropriately and there is time for the small animals to get themselves across to then if that's done properly, that should be good. Thank you.
I do have a comment, and I'm sorry, this is a question rather than a debate, and we did raise it at the site view, and that was the play area. Had we had any response regarding the play area, please?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. We did have a response. It's probably not what you want to hear. No, there will be no formal equipment or play areas within the open spaces, but it's what I also mentioned during the site visit on Monday, that we don't have planning policy basis to require this because the site is only 85 dwellings. If it was larger site, then we would have more to say. I think I might have mentioned this on Monday that even Campdown, which is 628, they were arguing that there is no need to provide a formal play areas. Also, given the fact that there is the large play area just opposite of South Downs College.
I think that was members who were on the site view were aware that there was a large play area across the road. They were worried. I think certainly my own personal concern was a small play area was going to be put in there, which the council normally these days do not support, and that it would just lay there and, you know, if for want of a better expression, rot away. I'm pleased to hear that, actually, because I think just having a grass place to play on when there's a big play area across the road, I think that's fine, and I thank you for that response. Any more questions at all? Right, officers, do you wish to? Sorry, Councillor Robert. Oh. Councillor Tanson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think I've already covered sort of concerns as people have with ecology. As already been mentioned, that I've got concerns over the road safety because it slows down at the far end, but a lot of the amenities are on the other side, and as has been mentioned in the public's responses, I've got concerns about the surgery and that side of things. But as is generally the case with these things, it's split across multiple authorities and outside the scope of this.
My experience of planning applications, this particular application for the preservation of the wildlife is probably the most. What I want, intensive, that word. But I think that's come before the committee. I mean, we normally have the sort of token things of putting the odd bat box up, and that's about it. But they've got, I mean, they're even putting in badger fences now. This is a bit more than normally goes in, and I think the agent here this evening has got the message from us that we're very, very keen to actually preserve that wildlife which is there, and I'm sure that he'll take that message back to the developers on our behalf. I'm sure he will. Thank you.
Yeah, I was sort of referring the local infrastructure in terms of medical provision and so on are concerns, but they are outside and there have been no objections. But I just thought that was worth mentioning as a concern, but at the same time, it does look a very positive brownfield development.
Yes, officers.
Yeah, just to clarify in response to that last comment, there a contribution towards healthcare provision is being secured as part of the application. It's item 8 of the section 106 requirements. So we have followed that up in response to the representations that we got.
Yes, I think in some areas now the actual doctor's surgeries are actually closed to newcomers. Certainly in Cow Plain, there's one will only take on newcomers to the area. They won't take on anybody that actually already has a doctor in the area. Right, officers, do you want to make any comments on the debate that we've had so far? No? Okay. Then in that case, I'll close the debate. Members, the motion is to grant permission for application APP 22000439, subject to conditions as set out in the officer's report. and the updated papers. Could I have a show of those in favour, please? That is unanimous, so that is carried. Thank you, members. I close the meeting at 7:46 will do. At 6:40. Somebody hasn't changed the clock.
6:53.
6:53. There we go. I close the meeting at 6:53. Thank you for your attendance.